Mother-in-law shows up after 25 years and expects to be accepted as a grandmother. I'm a single father. I have raised my son alone because when he was just a few days old, his mother suddenly decided she doesn't want a child anymore. She claimed she's not ready to have a child and refused to even feed him or hold him. I wanted to give her some time. I thought that maybe it's just postpartum depression or something. I was ready to be there for her, but she was serious. She packed her stuff and left the hospital. Her last words were that she wants to see neither me or our son ever again. I have never seen her since, and I kind of feel like mother-in-law had something to do with it because during her pregnancy, she was talking all the time about how young her daughter is and how inappropriate of a moment this is for her to have a child. I don't have any proof and I can't tell anything for sure, but I feel like mother-in-law somehow secretly persuaded her to take this step for whatever reason. So I was left alone with an infant in my hands. It definitely wasn't easy. I was just 21 years old. I had to leave college and work very hard to give my son everything he needed. Fortunately, I wasn't completely alone. There were people who helped me to get through the hardest period. People who babysat him while I was working, who gave me advice on how to take care of a baby, and I'll be forever thankful to them. When he grew up a little, it became easier. I could send him to a kindergarten and work without asking people to take care of him while I'm not there. During all this time, I hope to hear from his mother. I hope that she'll eventually come around and realize you can't just leave your child like a worthless piece of trash. But even though I had left her my contacts and she could call me or write me a letter or something, she didn't. I never heard from her. She never once used her rights to visit him. When he was little, he often asked me why did his mother leave him? Why didn't she want him? And I didn't know what to answer because I always tried not to speak badly of his mother in front of him. Now my son is 25 years old. He's a hardworking, educated young man, and I'm so proud of him. And I'm proud of myself that I was able to raise him to be a good person. We stopped talking about his mother a long time ago. It was his initiative. He was like, well, if she doesn't want to be with us, then it's her loss and there's nothing we can do about it. So recently, mother-in-law appeared on our doorstep. Without a call, without any kind of notification, she was just there, and she had come to visit her grandson. I couldn't believe my ears, and at first, I almost didn't recognize her, because so many years are past after all, and she was behaving as if she was a caring grandmother who had come to see her grandchild like she does all the time, not like she was gone for 25 years. When my son saw her, he didn't recognize her either. I have shown him pictures of his mother and his grandmother just in case they show up one day, but I never really thought that they would. She ran up to him and hugged him just like a loving grandmother would, asking how he's doing and how big and beautiful he has become. And he pushed her away and looked kind of confused. I told him that it's his grandmother who has randomly shown up to visit him, and he was like, oh, and walked away from her. Mother-in-law didn't take this reaction very well. She looked at me and was like, what have you taught him if he doesn't even say hello to his grandmother? He's looking at me as if I'm a stranger. Haven't you told him about his mother and me or shown him our pictures? Well, technically you are a stranger, mother-in-law. He had never seen you in person. So why are you so surprised? You show up out of thin air after 25 years when he's all grown up and expect him to treat you with love. Isn't it kind of delusional? My son said, Dad did show me your picture, but I needed no picture. I needed you to be there for me. He was quite hateful with her, throwing question after question at her, and mother-in-law's responses were so incredibly narrow-minded. It looked like she wasn't expecting him to ask any questions. He asked her where his mother was and mother-in-law was like, oh, she's doing very well. She's living together with a great man and she has 2 nice kids. She has gotten over that misunderstanding about your birth. She was acting as if her daughter was the victim here, as if we were the ones who left her. He asked her why did his mother abandon him. Mother-in-law said, well, she was such a young girl. It would be craziness for her to have a child at that age. She had her whole life ahead of her and a baby would only be an obstacle. You must understand it. she didn't want to lose her freedom. Honestly, her daughter was older than me when our son was born. She was 24. I don't think it's too early to have a child. It's not like she was 14 or something. Actually, age has nothing to do with it. I could have given up my son too. I was very young as well, but I didn't because I loved him and I wanted to be his father. At this point, I wanted to show mother-in-law the door. Obviously, she wasn't welcome in our house, but my son stopped me. He had one more question. He asked why mother-in-law didn't want to be his grandmother. His mother left him, fine, but why did mother-in-law leave him too? Mother-in-law said, well, I had no time to take care of you. I was a young woman too. I had my life too. And grandkids are only obligated to take care of grandparents when they're old, and that's why I'm here. Then my son told her to leave and never come back. He said he doesn't want to see her ever again, and he won't help her with anything. And as she was leaving, she attacked me like that's what I thought. A man alone cannot raise a proper human being. Such a rude and impolite boy. He would have turned out better in an orphanage than with you. So according to mother-in-law, the conclusion is don't have children while you're young, or if you do, feel free to leave them and then come back a few decades later, and they'll love you even though they have never received any kind of care from you. But seriously, what the hell was she expecting? I rearranged mother-in-law's furniture. You all, it was glorious. On mobile, new throwaway account, first post, long time lurker, yada yada. Let's get to the story. We've been married a long time. Mother-in-law was mostly Beck with a little just no, and I've been low to no contact for probably the last 10 years, and my life has been divine because of that. Dear husband doesn't mind because he gets lots of romance when his ma isn't interfering in our relationship. But way back, I tried so hard to get on her good side. I was such a sweet summer child. I thought to myself she should be happy for dear husband. I cooked and cleaned and threw parties, and most people liked me. But she was sly, so dear husband didn't catch the nuances of her behavior. I tried to point it out, with little luck, because I had no experience with a woman like this. We left for our honeymoon a week after our wedding, enough time for us to set up our small apartment and get cozy living together beforehand. We left for a week with the keys left to mother-in-law to fetch our mail and various things. You all, when we got back, she had completely rearranged my kitchen, the living room, threw out some of my pictures and knickknacks from our bedroom, and I swear she also tossed some of my lingerie. I was upset, so upset, and cried to dear husband. He, angry at his mom, talked to her, then came home with the usual, can you guess it? She can't imagine why I'd be upset. She was being so helpful. She didn't mean to do anything wrong, and the tears came at her bidding, so that dear husband was thrown for a loop. Never having experienced woman-to-woman territorial stomps, he came home spewing her diatribe and simply told me that he would help me put things back. And he did, except for the kitchen. He only made things worse in there, but not for lack of trying. Mother-in-law never even taught him to butter bread. Sigh. But I learned a valuable lesson. Whenever mother-in-law was up to her shenanigans, she would wait until we were alone, look at me and do this evil smile with a nod, sort of like those sub-gifs, to acknowledge her disdain to me properly. I learned from the best, the very best. Mother-in-law was the town pillar, active in church and charity, and so sweet to the people she approved of. So here is the meat of this post. Mother-in-law is old now and still just as sneaky. If anything, old age has sharpened her skills, and she has taken on the role of helpless old lady quite fabulously. There are volunteers who help her and bring her meals, sit and read with her. It's all quite nice, really. She did a week-long stint in the hospital recently, and dear husband got the key to her house to retrieve her mail, etc. etc. Well, I made a copy of said key without dear husband knowing, of course, because I had a plan. During that week, I took some time off work. I was so sick, don't you know, and let myself into her house to rearrange, clean her kitchen. I also threw away some broken porcelain and other items. They weren't necessary, took pictures off the walls and put them in the closet. Then I rearranged the linen closet, the coat closet, mother-in-law's closet, and her bathrooms, both of them. I left the living room mostly alone, sadly, but I didn't want dear husband to catch on. See, then on the day dear husband was supposed to pick her up from the hospital and bring her home, I offered to help dear husband clean her house for her homecoming. He was mildly surprised at my offer, but I said I've decided to let bygones be bygones. I will help, then get out of the way so dear husband could help mother-in-law get settled in. She can mostly live by herself with a little help every day from a CNA and hubs to check in on her. So we cleaned, mopped, and vacuumed, got everything sparkly and clean. I went with dear husband to fetch his mom and sat in the back seat. When we arrived, mother-in-law immediately noticed things were askew, but she couldn't tell what it was yet. Then she noticed the missing pictures. Mother-in-law, what did you do with my pictures? Dear husband and me, what do you mean? Mother-in-law, you stole my pictures. Me, oh my, no mother-in-law. I helped dear husband clean and that's all. Dear husband confirmed that is all I did. I asked if she'd like some tea and she yelled at me to stay out of her kitchen. She went in herself and screamed, what had we done? I looked at dear husband all puzzled and dear husband repeats that he and I only cleaned the counters and dishes and mopped. Mother-in-law was livid, so I told dear husband that my presence must be upsetting to her, so maybe I should leave. Dear husband, confused because he had no idea why his mom was acting so outwardly hostile to me, agreed. So I cheerfully told mother-in-law that I'd be on my way and dear husband could call me when he's ready to be picked up. That's all dear husband heard. He didn't see me smile at mother-in-law because he was facing my back. And you all, I nodded at her with her very own signature nod. She was livid. Dear husband told me on the way home, when I went to pick him up a few hours later, that she had accused me of all sorts of things, and that's when I said the poor dear's mind must be going. He agrees, the poor thing is getting so old. After all, she should have been nicer to me. I get to help pick her nursing home, and I know very well how to play the helpful, supportive role. Thanks, mother-in-law. Thanks for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on all of the OP's posts. Leave your comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.